En 62,
In 1962, I was 6 years old. You? Minus 35.
moins 35.
When
À
you were
6 ans,
6,
t'étais quoi?
what were you into?
Un Pokémon?
Dragon
un
Ball Z?
Ball?
Pokemon?
La génération
The generation
précédente,
before you was
c'était,
Goldorak and Ninja Turtles.
Goldorak, Tortue Ninja. Bon, bah,
My
nous,
generation
tout simplement,
only had engines
c'était
and
les Indiens et les
cowboys.
cow-boys.
And we
on avait
had
des
fake
pistolets à
pistols.
pétard. Tu vois là,
See?
coin du feu,
Next to
moi,
the
je sais pas si
bonfire,
c'est
I don't know if
Steve
I'm Steve McQueen or John Wayne.
Wayne.
Westerns
Les
can seem a
westerns,
little
ça peut paraître un peu
overrated.
désuet.
No, I wouldn't say that. You know, westerns are the base. Before all that, we had no idea how to film all those fights and pursuits.
Talking
Alors,
about
qu'est-ce qu'on peut
pursuits,
te dire?
the film I
Le film
chose
que j'ai
is
choisi,
legendary
non seulement il est
and a
mythique,
schooling trick.
mais c'est un cas d'école.
Tell me,
On est
Where
où
are
ici?
we?
in California, in the Wild West.
En version
Yup,
originale,
the film is How the West Was
Won.
Won. Enormous
Production
production,
colossale.
crazy distribution,
Distribution
estimated
énorme.
budget of
Budget,
$15,000
$15 millions
in
de dollars en
1962.
1962.
3 directors.
3 réalisateurs. C'est une grande
It's a big
fresque
time
qui
lapse
raconte 50
telling
ans
us
de
the
l'histoire
story
de la
of the
conquête
Wild
de
West.
l'Ouest.
Tu sais que
You know, some parts of that film of 2 hours and 45 minutes was filmed right in the Lone Pine area called Alabama Hills. Some other parts were filmed right here in the campground.
They filmed right here.
Yes, right here, and it's the first time that we were sleeping on the film set.
Nickel.
Yes, but if we're not attacked by the natives, because it's a lot around here.
Okay, Dad, if you say so.
Lone Pine is the countryside of westerns. It used to be the territories of the native tribes Paiute and Shoshone. The Owens Valley is only 3 hours away from Los Angeles. It starts in the east at the Sierra Nevada. Lone Pine is born thanks to the colonists who came here to mine gold, silver, marble, and granite. In 1920, the showbiz industry came to take advantage of the surroundings, making Lone Pine and the Alabama Hills an open-roof Hollywood. Wow, it's not surprising why they film everything here. Look at this light, that blue sky. It's mostly the light. It's crazy.
I don't even have my sunglasses.
Yeah, well, you should have thought about it before. Isn't it crazy how everything that's supposed to be happening in India, the lives of the Bengal Lancer, the charge of the Light Brigade, even those were shot in California, in Lone Pine. With those surroundings, you can never mess up a scene.
Look, that's where they shot the chase scene in How the West Was Won.
It seems like we're going to see them right there. You know, this scene took 2 days to prepare. During the shooting, there were carriage that made barrel rolls. There were people who got hurt and technical casualties, and all of that for only 5 seconds of screen time. Isn't that impressive?
For real?
It's unbelievable. That's really Hollywood. 2 days for 5 seconds. In all of this history of almost a century, they had to make a choice.
That's still crazy.
Right. One entire century of film. So, How the West Was Won, 1962. Why not? The year was one of the richest in our perspectives. And talking about westerns, with the 400 that were filmed here, How the West Was Won or another, same thing. our film comes in second place behind Cleopatra, Hitchcock's The Bird are in 8th place, right in front of Sean Connery in Dr. No. In music, 1962 is the creation of the Beatles and the launch of their first 45 LCP, Love Me Do.
Love me do.
It's Bob Dylan's first album. Also, the creation of the Rolling Stones. It's grooving with Elvis and his Good Luck Charm, and his slows with Ray Charles and his famous title, I Can't Stop Loving You. In February of '62, JFK has to acquire 1,000 of his favorite cigars, Little Upmans. The day after, as his wish is granted, and he gets his pen out, gets the paper on his desk, and signs them. The United States just announced the embargo on Cuba, meaning they blocked everything with the economy, commercial and financial ways. March 9th, the US got military involved in Vietnam. It's the start of a war of 10 years, which won't stop Kennedy from celebrating his 45th birthday. The 19th of May, Marilyn Monroe wore a famous dress and sang what she will be remembered for. That night, there was 15,000 people at the Madison Square Garden. America's Idol passed away 2.5 months later, the 5th of August. We chose to go to the moon. September 12th, the space program was officially launched.
And to the planets beyond. And we have vowed that we shall not see it governed.
In October, the missile crisis gets to its climax. The submarines and boat carriers of Nikita Khrushchev, president of the Soviet Union, are getting dangerously close to the US. The installation sites of the Soviet missiles on the island of Cuba just became visible. John Kennedy will have to show what he's made of, talk loud, and officially show to Nikita that him too had big toys. An international nuclear war was avoided by the Alliance. Kennedy's popularity went up while good old Nikita will go down to the abyss and resign 2 years later after the events. It is after this incident that a red phone will be placed between the White House and the Kremlin. Yves Saint Laurent presents his first collection and the first miniskirts are picking up on the London streets. Andy Warhol presents his first collection with his famous Campbell's soup can. He will use it to then create the dollar signs and American stars, including of course Marilyn. Graham Hill is named world champion in F1 on a BRM that will get a construction prize. In cycling, Raymond Poulidor starts with a broken hand. Jacques Anquetil with his co-runners Pierre Évrard and Jean Stablinski win the first phase for the 3rd time. In the end of '61, the legendary Ami 6, Sim Camille and Renault 4L are out on the streets. In England, Triumph announces the Spitfire. She will be produced until the 80s. MJ also produces the MJB in France. The still a convertible will set the tone for the new waves. In the US, the bigger the better. It's a pickup truck that takes away all the sales, the Ford F-150. Pontiac will win most prizes on the sedan side.
On a sillonné la totalité.
We went all over the Alabama hills and well,
la totalité du site. Et bon.
I thought all of this was fake, like in my games, Borderlands, Star Wars Battlefront, and Red Dead Redemption. But it's not, they just base themselves on nature.
Ouais, tout vient de la nature, mais t'avais pas un...
Didn't you have a cartoon that...
Yeah, Spirit Stallion of the Cinnamon in 2002, the movie of my childhood.
Alors, dessin
See,
animé,
cartoons,
jeux
video
vidéo,
games. Western, and even films that happen in India, all that in the Alabama hills.
Tout ça dans les Alabama Hills.
Welcome to the museum. This is the Museum of Western Film History here in Lone Pine, California. And so this is traditional to what a camera car would have been looked like and used. As you notice, there's multiple platforms where the cameramen would stand either in the rear, on top, in the front end, or of the car. And obviously somewhere along the line in the 30s or 40s was acquired by RKO, cutting off the back end and converted it to the camera car you see. Weighs about 6,000 pounds. And this is 6,000 pounds, yeah. John Wayne, obviously iconic Western hero for America. The last movie he made was The Shootist, about 1976. And so this is the outfit from The Shootist. And he also, before he passed away, he made a commercial.
The last movie.
This is the last movie John Wayne made, and he made it up here. Yeah.
Wow.
So this is the outfit. You can see the bullet hole. So these are some of the memorabilia.
It was not too big. Huh? I was thinking John Wayne, it was like that.
Yeah, no, I want to say he was 6'2". I'm not, it's a good question. I'm not quite sure.
I was thinking it's a giant, you know, it's very big guy.
How the West Was Won was filmed in Cinerama, meaning 3 cameras forming what we now call a panorama. Bob told us with enthusiasm how the past filmmakers did their magic, the perfect opportunity for me to remind him the French origin of film.
I would like to ask you something. Everywhere in USC you use imperial measurement. You use inch, feet, yard, miles, and for movie you use millimeter.
Right.
It's 35 millimeter.
Right.
Why you use French measure and why not imperial measure?
Well, when they developed,
movie.
You got to remember, a lot of film was developed in France.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But the millimeter is the width of the film.
Yes.
And as they developed
But
film,
you could use 1 inch and half.
But I don't believe 35 millimeter film was developed here in the United States. It was developed in France.
It's the only one metric measure I saw in America.
Yeah, it's
for
true.
Movie.
It's true.
We meet one people in town. She's a director, the president of Chamber of Commerce. She told us she was when he was young.
Oh, Kathleen.
Yes, she was.
She was in it. Yeah.
She was one extra in the How the West Was Won.
Right.
She was makeup in native with and moccasin.
Yeah. So this room pays homage to the Alabama Hills becoming another part of the world, typically India, China, and so Gunga Din, the largest movie ever mounted here. This is the temple. So they had a whole tent city. They had almost 1,300 people living out in the Alabama Hills.
That's a good heritage if they would have left it there.
Yeah, well, because it's government land, the rule is if you build it, you have to take it down. Right? Yeah. There are some films other than Western shot here. 1937, Bogey made High Sierra here. And so this is the actual 37 Plymouth that Bogey drove in the movie. In the movie, he's running from the police coming down Whitney Portal Road, which starts about 8,000 feet and then comes down to the Alabamas here. Those that, look into cars said that Bogey was not a great driver. And he probably drove a 37 Plymouth.
Why it was not a great driver?
Well, I don't know.
We know.
Many people, of course, remember Gladiator with Russell Crowe. And so in the scene, we have Russell Crowe riding across the hills of Rome in front of that's Lone Pine Peak and Mount Whitney. And we have a script and others. The first Iron Man, there's a scene where Robert Downey Jr. is against the Sierras, and he says, I give you Jericho, and all the bombs go off. Well, this scene was shot out here in the Alabama Hills. We've had parts of Star Wars and Star Trek were shot here. When 30, 40, 35 years ago when they shot Star Wars, they needed some of those little characters, those hooded characters, and so they went to the school. One of our gals that's a part-time volunteer, she was a teacher, and it was her and her children that she taught went out and were part of that movie in Death Valley. Quentin Tarantino was here in 2012 to shoot Django, and so when Quentin was here, some of the guys signed the wall right here and put a picture up.
That's so cool.
If you remember the wagon in Django, he had 3 wagons, and he gave us one. William Whitney made over 100 films up here in the Alabamas, and was somewhat of a, I won't call him obscure, but it was not on the tip of everyone's tongue until Tarantino, who was a huge movie fan, was being interviewed by the press about 3 years ago, and went on and on about his love of William Whitney's directing, how much he learned from watching William Whitney's films. So overnight, William Whitney became a household word. And so when Tarantino came up and shot Django here, he asked, we have the clapboard that William Whitney used to make films, and he asked if he could use it. So he used it in making Django. If you have a motorhome or you have your car, you can go anywhere in 25,000 acres, pull it as a designated area. You just can't drive off into the dirt, and you can camp.
Qu'est-ce que tu fais ici, toi?
What are you doing here?
We're here to hike Mount Whitney, right over there. We've been here 3 days, and tomorrow we're going to go to Vegas to change it up a little bit.
But here, in Lone Pine, what you hoping to see?
Mount Whitney.
And movies don't interest you?
Yeah, no. Since I was a kid, I was a fan of the Lone Ranger. Me and my 2 brothers would all go every morning to the theaters to see the Lone Ranger.
And How the West Was Won?
Yeah, I know that one.
The Lives of the Bengal Lancer?
Yeah, a little bit.
The Charge of the Light Brigade?
Of course.
And Bonanza?
Everything.
Well, all of that was filmed here.
Who's the owner of the...
Oh, the lands?
Yes.
Well, the county, Inyo County, which is the second largest county here in California, second only to San Bernardino, runs from Bishop, which is north of here, just before Mammoth, to Death Valley. It's huge. I want to say 10,000 square acres. And 98.5% of the county is owned either by the Forest Service, the Bureau of Land Management, BLM, other governmental agencies, military.
You have two preservation. You have one here and one in Independence.
Yes, we have the Native Americans who, of course, lived in. There's an interesting history.
Les chevaux, tu les attrapes.
In 1985, the US Supreme Court decided that Native Americans will be able to practice hazards games. Hundreds of casinos open everywhere and anywhere in reservations. Sometimes there are huge resorts with restaurants, clubs, and sometimes too, like here in Independence, it is small businesses that are enough to profit the tribes.
Manzanar is somewhat of a destination for the Japanese heritage, because so many Japanese Americans were interred during the World War II.
Even if they built a memorial, Americans aren't really proud of this historic site. This place has a bad feeling, you know?
On sent pas bon, des mauvaises ondes, hein. Et 110 000 personnes vivaient ici.
10,000 people lived here by force. The only sign I found might be what's left of this Japanese garden.
C'est peut-être les vestiges de ce jardin japonais.
So all Americans thought Japanese people were spies?
In 1941, right after the war entry between the US and Japan, Americans believed all citizens with a Japanese heritage to be enemy or spies. And it was a danger for the nation. So in their perspective, the security of the country came first, and they decided to separate them from any outside contact and setting them into detention camps like this one. There was about a dozen of them, but Manzanar was the biggest. You have a really good perspective when you see that today's Lone Pine population is only of 2,000. And during the war, it was 1,500, 1,600. And here, there were more than 100,000. It's insane. It was like a huge city around two villages to keep all those people here.
Or surveillance tower, that's not super cool.
Manzanar is really another story than Westerns.
Los Angeles was struggling, it was growing as a city, and they needed water.
A water engineer went to Killer, where the Owen Lakes was at its peak. He realizes that the water that was at the elevation of 4,000 feet can easily be transported by gravity to Los Angeles. The aqueduct construction is decided in 1905. It will be open November 5th, 1913.
The lake was 40 miles by 13 miles and served, well, it wasn't that deep, 13 feet maybe in the deepest area. Its history was very important because we had Cerro Gordo mine, we had mines, and the lake was used to transport the silver across the lake so they could more easily transport it down towards Los Angeles. And of course that was in the 1850s and 60s.
5,000 people lived there, and they were proud of their railway boat station. The town had a huge economy, and it would also profit Lone Pine. But in 1924, Killer knows what's coming.
And by 1924, that lake was dry.
It's the beginning of the water war, with misuse of public money. The mayor and Los Angeles Water Department made sure to buy all land where the aqueduct passes by. The townsfolk, colonists, farmers, natives feel left behind and sometimes need to lead a tax to be heard. That story will also be the subject of the Roman Polanski film Chinatown.
1970s, and there's some documentation on the websites, Owens Lake Valley, what's left of the lake, was the greatest contributor to dust particles in the United States. There was huge dust storms that would come up and blow these minerals and salts around. People were getting sick, of course.
The dust storms Bob is talking to us about are truly extremely toxic. They contain parts of chlorine and arsenic. This phenomenon of toxic clouds happens approximately for 25 days a year, travels to 155 miles, and affects the health of about 40,000 people. In 1917, Killer dies. Everything is lost. No more mines, railways, and no more lake. Meanwhile, Lone Pine is still striking.
Do you think it will ever be a lake there again?
No.
But Killer isn't completely dead. Some have found advantages in those abandoned towns. From Michigan, Suzanne found her happiness. It's her version of the Wild West. It's the first time that she's truly at home and she can finally express herself.
So you guys are in the cool car, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, we were just
Thunderbird.
Yeah, me and my sister's boyfriend, or my daughter's boyfriend, we were going, wow, did you see that Thunderbird? Oh my gosh, that's awesome. It is, it's a beautiful car. When it started to get winter, everybody's plants were dying, and I had a whole bunch of plants growing in these. And when they started to die, I got some spray paint and I painted them all green. So everybody kept wondering why my plants were still green and theirs were dead. I didn't give out the secret right away. But the next year, the next spring, they came back even bigger, and I thought it would kill them, the spray paint, but it didn't. It made them even bigger the following year.
Made them stronger.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
The Wild West is the story of the colonists, natives, cowboys, and bandits. If cinema tells stories, so could hats.
So merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci. Thank you for coming.
And God save Lone Pine.
and
your museum.
bring water.